in the forest you'll find a fabulous banquet, a fairy ball. If you close your eyes and you open your mind, the veil disappears and you'll see it all.
Hi my angels, it's Haley Reese, and today's video is one that I have been meaning to make for the longest time, in kind of a series that I've really wanted to bring on this channel. I personally really enjoy watching true crime cases, learning about different cases across the world, and kind of exploring different theories and things that could have happened where unsolved cases are concerned. It's honestly one of the top things that I watch on YouTube, alongside like my paranormal stuff that I enjoy to watch and things like that. And I figured, since you guys enjoyed my terrifying case of the Silent Twins so much, and I enjoy things like this, cases like this, exploring them, discussing them, raising conversation so much, why not bring an element of this to my channel, talk about true cases, explore different theories, and try to figure out what may have happened where unsolved cases are concerned. Now, this doesn't mean that I am by any means neglecting or moving on or changing my content that I currently do. Paranormal is gonna stay, all of that stuff, my personal stories. I'm definitely bringing back some haunted house series videos again that I've been saving for you guys. But I just constantly strive to bring new content to my channel, to continue to entertain you guys and bring you the best possible content. So if you guys enjoy videos like this as much as I enjoy them, and as much as I know I'm going to enjoy creating them, then make sure to let me know that this is something you want me to bring to my channel weekly as well, and just kind of keep fresh content coming up on here. Today we're going to be exploring the tragic and devastating case of JonBenét Ramsey that is an unsolved murder. And I know that this case is extremely mainstream. I know that tons of people have talked about it, but you guys have no idea how much this case has been requested, how many of you want to hear what I think happened, my different theories, and just kind of a fresh new take on the case. And so that's exactly what I'm gonna do today. I hope that if you've heard about this case, or you know about this case, that you'll still enjoy this video, that you'll enjoy my opinions, my views, and my take on it. And if you do enjoy today's video, like I said, make sure to let me know, maybe recommend some different cases. I don't want to just do mainstream, I want to bring some fresh content. You guys know that's just in my nature. But without further ado, let's get into this case, because there are so many elements to take into consideration with this case, and there's so much that I have to cover. So JonBenét Ramsey was a 6-year-old American beauty pageant queen. She was adorable, she was beautiful, and she had a pretty big mark in that pageant world. She'd won tons of titles, everybody thought that she was just adorable, and unfortunately, on December 25th/26th of 1996, JonBenét Ramsey was murdered in her family home. Now, I was born January 30th, 1996, so this happened about approximately just shy of a year after I was born, and I grew up kind of following the different updates with this case. As you guys know, to this day, people are still theorizing about this case. People are trying to find new evidence. This case is still open, and the criminal behind this, the murderer, has never been caught. And this is really frustrating for so many people, because there seems to be so much evidence pointing towards certain individuals, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But I definitely grew up hearing about and learning about this case. So at 5:52 a.m. on December 26, 1996, Patsy Ramsey, JonBenét's mother, made a absolutely frantic 911 call, claiming that her daughter had been kidnapped, and all that was left behind was a ransom note that wanted $118,000 in exchange for the safe return of her daughter, JonBenét. Now, she had found this ransom note on the stairs in their home in Boulder, Colorado, and it is a lengthy ransom note. Let me just tell you that it is a 2.5-page ransom note. It rambles in different directions. It's one of the strangest ransom notes that I've ever read, and I will tell you that when I learned about this case, I read different ransom notes that did turn out to be factual and true ransom notes, and they were just very different in a lot of aspects. But this 911 call was very odd. She's freaking out on the 911 call, claiming that her daughter has been taken, that this note has been left. And then nearing the end of the 911 call, it appears as though Patsy Ramsey thought that she had hung up, but she had in fact not. And in recent years, they've enhanced this audio call and they heard 3 voices, which doesn't line up to their story, which we'll get to in a moment. But the whole 911 call, looking back now, raises a lot of red flags for both the dispatcher and just the public in general. So JonBenét lived in a massive home in Boulder, Colorado, as I mentioned, with her mother, Patsy Ramsey, her father, John Bennett Ramsey, and her brother, Burke Ramsey. Now, Burke Ramsey would have been 9 years old at the time, and supposedly, what they say is that he slept through this entire ordeal, that he was sleeping up until the police arrived. Now, like I just mentioned, when the 911 call was enhanced and that blank space where Patsy Ramsey had thought she hung up, they believed to hear 3 voices. Now, since it was only the 4 of them in the home, that doesn't line up to their story of Burke Ramsey being asleep. And later suspicions revolving around Patsy Ramsey and Burke Ramsey make this more of a red flag than you would normally think. Now, one more thing I want to talk about with that 911 call is the fact that Patsy Ramsey's voice and demeanor changed after she thought she had hung up. Even the 911 dispatcher claims that the demeanor and the tone of her voice and the franticness and the panic in it just changed, and it was as though it was all sort of an act. So the Boulder police arrived just minutes after this 911 call, and a really strange thing about this case, I'm gonna keep saying that because everything about this case is strange, but a really strange thing is that the Ramseys had called up their family and friends and they were all arriving to this crime scene. Now, this is a big no-no, and the Boulder police didn't really take it as one to begin with, but later this was detrimental to the discovery of the murderer. So all these people are in this crime scene, they're leaving different footprints, different fingerprints, different DNAs, and they're really just contaminating the crime scene itself. Now, the Boulder police didn't find this to be a negative thing whatsoever because they were focusing primarily on this ransom note. They believed, due to the ransom note, that this was just a kidnapping. They had no idea that they would later find the body of JonBenét Ramsey within that home. They were looking in exterior places. They were looking for kidnapper. But less than 8 hours after that initial 911 call, the Boulder police suggested that John Ramsey and a friend of his just kind of scope out the house as a final walkthrough to see if they could find any more evidence. And that is when they discovered JonBenét downstairs in the basement, and she was dead. She had duct tape over her mouth, she had a cord around her neck, she was wrapped inside of a blanket, and John Ramsey just scooped up his daughter and therefore tampered once again with the crime scene. Now, there were tons of things wrong with this crime scene. There were tons of big mistakes that the Boulder police made by just going off of that ransom note, by just going off of the idea that she had in fact been kidnapped. Like I mentioned, there were friends and family throughout this crime scene, leaving different DNAs, tampering with it. John Ramsey found his daughter and took her out of the crime scene. And this was all just because the Boulder police didn't believe that they would find her within that home. Now, I'm definitely not a police officer. I haven't studied law enforcement. I have no idea how to conduct a homicide investigation, but I do know that the evidence and the DNA is very, very crucial within those first 24, 48 hours, and that you should not be tampering with DNA evidence and just the entire crime scene in general. So I think that was really poorly conducted, and I think that it was very detrimental to the closure of this case. Now, there were no signs of forced entry. It was winter time, there was snow outside. I'm from Canada, so I can definitely appreciate how you can see footprints in the snow, how they last. Like, footprints in the snow can last for weeks, depending on the type of snow, and even massive snowfalls you can still kind of see. There were no footprints in the snow. There was no sign of forced entry. There was really little to no evidence that anybody had in fact broken in. There was no snow boot footprints throughout the house. It was just really a dead end as far as an intruder went. But the autopsy revealed that JonBenét had sustained a broken skull from blunt force trauma to the skull, but her cause of death was actually strangulation. And they therefore ruled her death a homicide and began looking for the killer. Now, all along, the Ramsey family played as though there was some sort of monster on the loose, and they swore up and down they had nothing to do with this. But let's take a moment and run back to the ransom note that kind of started this all, because this ransom note has to be one of the most bizarre aspects of this entire case, and one of the things that really has my brain going 1,000 miles per minute. The integrity of this note was compromised drastically when it was discovered that the note had been written with a pen and notepad from the Ramsey residence that they kept to take their notes on. Now, I don't know about you, I definitely don't have the mindset of somebody who's going to take a child for ransom. I definitely don't have that criminal mindset, nor do I have, you know, the police mindset, the FBI mindset, but I know for a fact that it's common sense that you would probably pre-write your ransom note, considering that the ransom note was 2.5 pages long. This ransom note was long, it was depthy, it kind of ran in different directions, it was kind of all over the place in a lot of different ways. They gave a lot more details than I truly believe that somebody wanting ransom for your child would give, but I just can't get my mind around the fact that this person or these people would sit down in a family home, use the pen and the paper, and not leave DNA evidence behind on that, and write out a ransom note. Now, they also found evidence of them doing rough drafts of this ransom note, so they sat there for a good amount of time. Now, studies have shown that to write out this ransom note would take at least 20 minutes, so there's just no way that with the rough drafts and with the amount of time it would take to write this note, that they wouldn't fear getting caught. Another thing that really doesn't add up about this to me is the fact that JonBenét was dead in the basement. So first and foremost, I can't picture somebody killing a child, sitting down, and writing a fake ransom note. For two reasons, that doesn't make any sense to me. The first reason that it doesn't make sense to me is, let's say you really did want ransom. Even if you killed JonBenét, would you not take the body with you in hopes of getting the $118,000 in exchange for her? Or would you leave the body for them to find and the ransom note meant nothing? And if the ransom note was meant to throw the police off to a different track, why would you leave the body behind to prove that you never really wanted the ransom anyways? You left the body in the home. It doesn't make sense to me. I feel as though the ransom note couldn't be a criminal's way to throw police off because they left the body behind, they left the body in the basement where they knew it would be found. And two, if you really wanted the ransom, once again, why would you leave the body behind? It all just doesn't make sense to me. It does not make sense that somebody would sit there for a half an hour within the home they've committed a murder in to write a ransom note that in turn didn't work in either favor. But while we're on the topic of how just incredibly odd this ransom note is, let's talk about the fact the handwriting was crazy inconsistent. It seemed as though somebody started out writing this note trying to write a certain way, and then they kind of maybe got sloppy and were just changing their handwriting, and it kind of went more towards their own handwriting near the end. But I mean, when they did a handwriting analysis on it, it just didn't seem like a real ransom note. There were big words that somebody who maybe didn't have the highest education level or somebody who wasn't great at spelling wouldn't be able to spell, which were spelled right. But then there were small words like business and things that most people know how to spell spelled wrong. It seemed as though somebody was trying to purposely make themselves sound like maybe English wasn't their first language, or maybe they were uneducated. It just didn't line up to the standard ransom notes. So due to the fact there was little to no evidence pointing in the direction of an intruder, and given the suspicion surrounding the ransom note, quite obviously the Ramseys became the forefront of suspicion as to who could have done this. So they ended up conducting a handwriting analysis, and they basically analyzed the handwriting of John Ramsey and analyzed the handwriting of Patsy Ramsey. Now, right away, they ruled out the fact that John Ramsey wrote this. There was no way in the world that he had written this letter. However, Patsy Ramsey was inconclusive. They couldn't point in the direction of whether she had wrote it or had not wrote it, but they could tell that certain letters, which were very unique, that Patsy Ramsey wrote, matched the ransom note. And right away, people thought that Patsy Ramsey had in fact written this ransom note. Now, a really interesting thing I find that kind of just heightens the suspicion around this case is the fact that the strangulation happened between 45 minutes to 2 hours after the hit to the head. So this kind of raised red flags for people, and even myself, thinking, was the hit to the head an accident? Was it a hit gone too far? Did they think she was gonna die? Were they trying to cover it up? Were they thinking that they were gonna get in trouble? Did Burke Ramsey perhaps hit his sister too hard and the parents wanted to cover it up to not lose both of their children? I'm not sure, but if somebody was in a home and they're spending that amount of time writing out a letter, they're spending that amount of time in the family home, they're gonna hit the head of the kid, do you really think they would wait between 45 minutes to 2 hours to actually finish off the murder? Like, that would be a lot of time, like I said, between the ransom note and between the strangulation to be in this home after committing such a crime and in a home invasion in general. Just the entire timeline seems as though an intruder is just less and less and less likely. Now, there were suspects outside of the family. They had a couple pretty strong suspicions about different individuals. There was one man by the name of Bill Reynolds. There was another man by the name of Gary Oliva. I really hope I'm pronouncing that right. And the Gary one is really strange to me because he had been arrested in 2016 on child pornography charges. However, 16 years earlier, he had been arrested on unrelated drug charges, and they had found a picture of JonBenét in his backpack. And when he was questioned on this, he basically just went on to say, oh, I thought she was a really special girl. I was really sad about what happened to her. But then years later, he was arrested on child pornography charges. So people started to really put him as a primary suspect, thinking, did he do something to JonBenét? Even stranger as far as Gary's concerned is that his friend Michael Vale had told In Touch that a day after the JonBenét murder, he had called him and said, I heard a little girl, I heard a little girl. And he even told him that it was in Boulder, Colorado. Now, JonBenét was the only child hurt in that area that night. So when that all came to light, Michael Vale thought that perhaps Gary had actually done it. But let's take a moment and go back to what all of the evidence that was found in the home kind of adds up to. So first and foremost, something that I find extremely strange was that a paintbrush from Patsy's hobby kit was used to tighten the cord around JonBenét's neck. They also found DNA from an unidentified male on her long johns and on her underwear. And when the FBI ran this through their database, there were no matches. There were 2 sets of unidentified footprints within the home, which, I mean, a lot of people were coming in and out, but they were unidentified, and there was a rope found near JonBenét's bedroom that the family claims was not theirs. But the strangest piece of evidence of all that I find really, really odd is that fibers from Patsy Ramsey's sweater were found on the duct tape used to duct tape JonBenét. Now, another thing that people found really strange was that Patsy Ramsey was wearing the exact same thing that she had worn to her Christmas dinner the day before. She claims that when she found out her daughter was missing, she just got dressed in the same thing. But the fact that the fibers from that sweater were found on the duct tape attached to JonBenét and that she was wearing the same thing, people think, was it maybe an eventful night? Did she never go to sleep at all, and did something go terribly wrong with JonBenét? Now, a DNA expert actually analyzed the DNA on JonBenét's long johns and JonBenét's underwear, and he came to the conclusion that the DNA could actually be from the manufacturer. So somebody who, you know, packaged it or things like that had left their DNA on it. And he even went on to test an unopened underwear package, and there was DNA found on them. So that could have been the case as well, and that could have been DNA completely unrelated to the murderer. Now, a lot of people feel that this may have had something to do with Burke. I mean, take it back to the fact that Burke was supposedly asleep, but when the 911 call was enhanced, you could hear a third voice. There was only 4 of them in the home, and people who knew Burke claimed that he could be very, very violent at times. So a theory kind of rise that perhaps Burke had accidentally, or purposely, but accidentally hit his sister too hard on the back of the head. The parents freaked out. To cover it up, they staged this whole thing. They strangled her and kind of tried to cover up the entire thing. Now, Burke actually did an interview with Dr. Phil. I will link it down below. It's one of the strangest things I've ever seen. As somebody who's compassionate towards all people, I can understand that people cope with things differently, that the smirks and smiles and kind of odd looks on his face could be just his way of coping with the tragedy his family encountered. And if he and the family had nothing to do with it, I feel horribly for being inclined to feel as though perhaps they did. But the interview with Dr. Phil is just very, very awkward, and he seems very numb to the situation, just very cold towards it and kind of disconnected. Now, I will note that the family was completely cleared of any charges relating to the case. Patsy Ramsey wound up dying of cancer, and so now all that's left is Burke Ramsey and John Ramsey, and there are tons of people who feel the case should be reopened, that they should be investigated further. But ultimately, it's been years. Like I said, this happened the year I was born. I was approaching 1 year old when this happened. I'm 22. This has been over 21 years and counting. And I just don't think it's likely that we will ever truly know what happened that Christmas day in Boulder, Colorado. I'm sure you guys have heard about the fact that people believe JonBenét Ramsey could be Katy Perry. There's a lot of conspiracy theories revolving around her, but I think personally, I'm going to have to speculate that the family may have had something to do with this. Just the way that the note was, the fact that right after the body was found, they hired a lawyer like 2 hours later, and they even stopped cooperating with the police for no apparent reason. I know I don't have kids, but if something happened to my dog, I would be inclined to continue to stay with the police to figure out what we can do to find this person. I wouldn't cut the police off and go to media interviews rather than taking interviews with the police to figure out what on earth had happened. There's a lot of inconsistencies with this case. I think one of the strangest factors is the fact that this ransom note was created on a notepad and with a pen from the Ramsey residence. The fact that they invited all these friends and family over, they tampered with the crime scene, there's fibers, it's just a very, very odd case, and it's very tragic because JonBenét was a beautiful little girl, and I feel as though she deserves the closure of people finding out what really happened to her and the proper people being held accountable. But unfortunately, like far too many true crime cases, we don't always have that happy ending of finding and bringing to justice those who did these things. So it's really sad. The case, like I said, is one that I will continuously follow up on, try to figure out what happened, and pray that someday we can kind of get some closure on this case. But unfortunately, at this point, over 2 decades later, I just don't think it's going to happen. I don't know, it's all very overwhelming. There's a lot of evidence that leads to believe certain things, but this is the point in the video where I turn it to you guys. You guys have definitely heard about this case before. You know all of these details. What do you think happened? I always tell you this, but I'll continue to say it because it's the truth. I love nothing more than reading through your guys' comments, hearing your different theories, and theorizing together as to what could have happened. So please, 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 even if you've commented a million times in other people's videos, let me know what you think happened back in 1996 to the beautiful 6-year-old JonBenét Ramsey. I hope that you guys enjoyed today's video. I hope that this is maybe a series that you want me to continue. Like I said, I don't want to do all the mainstream ones that everybody's done. I really do want to go that extra mile to find cases that haven't been talked about as often and kind of shed light on them and kind of talk about it with you guys and try to figure out what happened and at the very least spread awareness for things like this. So if you guys did enjoy today's video, make sure to let me know. And also, if you have any suggestions at all whatsoever, leave them in the comment section because I'm looking for some inspiration for future videos in this department. Thank you so much for watching this video, especially if it's one that you are familiar with. You are truly incredible for taking the time to watch mine, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. If you're new to my channel or you are just not yet subscribed but you do enjoy my videos, I would absolutely love it if you would go ahead and click that subscribe button, join the Reese's Pieces. We would absolutely love to have you. And if you did enjoy today's video, please make sure to give it a big thumbs up because that makes my heart so incredibly happy. I really, really appreciate knowing that you guys enjoy my content. So please, please, please do that. Remember, my loves, do all things with kindness. And until next time, I love you.